The city of Dubai glittered under the night sky, a kingdom of glass towers and neon lights. The wealthy dined in rooftop restaurants, their laughter floating into the warm air, while luxury cars prowled the streets below. It was a world of power, prestige, and untouchable privilege. Aisha Hassan did not belong in this world. She moved through the grand ballroom of the Al Mansour Hotel, a silver tray balanced on her arm. The scent of expensive cologne and aged whiskey filled her nose as she weaved through the sea of powerful businessmen and elegantly dressed women. The soft clinking of glasses, the murmured conversations in English, Arabic, and French, it was all a background hum to her. Tonight was a special night. The Al Mansour Hotel was hosting an exclusive private event, and every server had been given strict instructions, no mistakes. The guests were the elite, men and women whose wealth could buy entire nations. And then he walked in, Rashid Al-Fayez. The air in the room shifted the moment he arrived. Conversations faltered, eyes turned toward him, and even the most influential men straightened their postures. Dressed in an all-black tailored Armani suit, he carried an aura of effortless power. Aisha had heard of him before. Everyone had. Rashid Al-Fayez was one of the most ruthless billionaires in the Middle East. He was young, dangerously intelligent, and utterly untouchable. He had built an empire that spanned multiple industries: real estate, oil, tech. Some said he was a genius, others called him a shark. But up close, he was something else entirely. He was breathtaking. His features were sharp, his jawline cut like it had been sculpted from marble. His deep brown eyes scanned the room with quiet intensity, missing nothing. He wasn't just observing. He was assessing, controlling, dominating the space around him without a single word. Aisha swallowed hard and lowered her gaze. She had worked in this hotel for nearly 2 years, and she had seen many wealthy men. But none like him. She forced herself to focus on her job. Just another night. Just another guest. But fate had other plans. As she moved toward Rashid's table, balancing a tray of drinks, disaster struck. One of the guests at a nearby table stood up abruptly, colliding into Aisha. Her balance wavered, and before she could stop it, crash. The tray slipped from her hands. Glasses shattered. The golden liquid of expensive champagne splashed onto Rashid Al-Fayez's suit. Silence. Aisha's entire body went cold. Every head in the room turned. The murmurs stopped. The manager was on her in an instant, his face pale with horror. "You clumsy fool," he hissed under his breath, gripping her wrist tightly. "Do you have any idea who you just spilled?" A deep voice interrupted. "Enough." The manager froze. The grip on Aisha's wrist loosened. Rashid Al-Fayez was looking at her. Not with anger, not with disgust, with curiosity. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, Rashid reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a silk handkerchief, and dabbed at the spill on his suit. He never broke eye contact with her. "What's your name?" His voice was smooth, deep, carrying an authority that demanded answers. Aisha's throat felt dry. "Aisha," she whispered. Something flickered in his gaze. Something unreadable. "Leave her," Rashid said to the manager. "But sir," I said, "leave her." The authority in his voice made it clear. His word was final. The manager stepped back, swallowing hard. Aisha, still in shock, stood frozen. Then, Rashid did something no one expected. He smirked. It was subtle, barely there, but Aisha saw it. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone. Without another word, Rashid turned and walked toward the exit. His bodyguards followed. The moment he was gone, the whispers erupted. Aisha barely heard them. Her heart was still pounding. She had just spilled champagne on one of the most powerful men in the world. And instead of ruining her, he had let her go. Why? She didn't know it yet, but that night had changed her life forever. Aisha stood frozen in place, the weight of 100 stairs pressing down on her. The Al Mansour Hotel, once alive with murmured conversations and the clinking of glasses, now buzzed with whispers about her. She had just spilled champagne on Rashid Al-Fayez, one of the most powerful men in Dubai, and he had let her go.
Why?
The question burned in her mind as she turned on her heel and rushed toward the staff exit, her pulse racing. The moment she stepped into the back hallway, she exhaled a shaky breath. "Are you insane?" Miriam, her best friend and fellow waitress, grabbed her arm. "Do you realize what could have happened? He could have had you fired, arrested, worse." Aisha closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. "I know," she whispered. "I don't understand it either." But deep down, she did understand. There had been something in Rashid's eyes when he looked at her. Not anger, not irritation. Something else. Curiosity. And that scared her more than anything. An unexpected visit. Aisha finished her shift in silence, ignoring the lingering stares of her co-workers. The moment she stepped outside the hotel's back entrance, the warm Dubai air wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. The walk to her tiny shared apartment was long, but she welcomed the solitude. She needed time to think, to process what had happened. She was nearly halfway home when the sound of an approaching car caught her attention. The sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop beside her. Her stomach clenched. The tinted window rolled down. And there he was, Rashid Al-Fayez. Even in the dim streetlights, his presence was overpowering. He leaned slightly against the leather seat, his sharp brown eyes fixed on her with the same unreadable expression from earlier. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city noise faded into the background. Then he finally broke the silence. "Get in." Aisha's breath hitched. "Excuse me?" His tone was calm, unwavering. "Get in the car." Her instinct screamed at her to refuse. This was dangerous. This was reckless. And yet, something inside her whispered that if she walked away now, she would regret it forever. So, against all logic, against every rule she had ever followed, Aisha took a deep breath and opened the car door. The proposition. The interior of the car smelled of expensive leather and something distinctly masculine, Rashid's cologne, sharp and intoxicating. The seats were so soft that she felt like she was sinking into them. But she had no time to appreciate the luxury. Her entire body was on high alert. Rashid watched her, one arm resting lazily on the door as if he had all the time in the world. "You're brave," he said. Aisha swallowed. "Or foolish." A ghost of a smirk touched his lips. "Maybe both." Silence stretched between them. The only sound was the faint hum of the car's engine. Then, Rashid spoke again. "I have a proposition for you." Aisha's pulse quickened. "A proposition?" His eyes darkened slightly. "Work for me." She blinked. "You want to hire me?" "Yes." Her mind raced. "As what?" He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "As my personal assistant." Aisha's heart pounded. This made no sense. "I don't understand. You don't even know me." Rashid's gaze didn't waver. "I know enough." Her breath caught. "Why me?" A long pause. Then, "You intrigue me." Aisha felt her stomach twist. She should refuse. She should run. But something about the way he said it, the certainty in his voice, sent a shiver down her spine. "I don't have experience as an assistant," she said carefully. Rashid leaned forward slightly, closing the space between them. "You're intelligent.
Quick.
And unlike most people, you're not afraid of me." She stiffened. "I am." His smirk returned, but there was something darker behind it now. "Then why are you still here?" Aisha didn't have an answer to that. She looked away, her fingers gripping the edge of her seat. What would this job involve? Rashid leaned back, exuding power. "You'll assist me with personal and business matters. You'll accompany me to meetings, travel when necessary, handle certain tasks." Her brows furrowed. "What kind of tasks?" His expression remained unreadable. "You'll find out." That sent a chill down her spine. "And if I refuse?" she asked, testing him. Rashid shrugged. "Then you walk away, and we never see each other again." Her breath caught. It was a choice. A real choice. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had already made her decision the moment she stepped into this car. "Fine," she whispered. "I'll do it." Rashid's gaze flickered with something dangerous. Something victorious. Good. The car pulled away from the curb, gliding into the night. Aisha knew, without a doubt, that her life would never be the same again. Aisha sat stiffly in the back seat of the Rolls-Royce, her heart pounding so loudly that she was sure Rashid could hear it. The weight of what she had just agreed to settled heavily on her shoulders. Work for him? Assist him in personal and business matters? She barely knew what that meant. Was she making a mistake? Her hands clenched into fists on her lap as the car moved smoothly through the neon-lit streets of Dubai. The silence between them was thick, charged with an energy she couldn't quite decipher. Finally, she forced herself to speak. What exactly does this job entail? Rashid didn't turn to face her. He kept his gaze on the passing cityscape, his fingers tapping idly against the leather seat. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm yet firm. You'll be on call at all times. You'll assist me with meetings, manage personal schedules, and handle confidential matters. Sometimes, you'll be required to travel with me. Her breath caught. Travel? She had never even left Dubai since arriving here on a student visa. She exhaled slowly. And the salary? He glanced at her then, his dark eyes gleaming under the dim car lights. 5 times what you made at the hotel. Aisha's breath hitched. 5 times? That was more money than she had ever imagined making in a year. It was enough to change her life, to send money back home, to finally stop worrying about where her next meal would come from. But at what cost? She wet her lips. And the rules. Rashid's smirk returned, but this time, it carried a sharper edge. There are 3. He held up his fingers. First, you answer only to me. No questions, no complaints. Aisha swallowed. No questions? That already felt like a dangerous path. Second, you do not betray my trust. His voice darkened, the teasing glint in his eyes vanishing. Disloyalty is something I do not tolerate. A shiver ran down her spine. Something about the way he said it made her realize he wasn't just talking about business. She hesitated before asking, and the third rule? He leaned in slightly, his presence overwhelming. You never, under any circumstances, fall for me. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. Was he serious? Her stomach flipped, but she forced out a laugh, trying to mask her nervousness. I think that rule will be the easiest to follow. Rashid's smirk deepened, but he said nothing. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek, black folder. He handed it to her. A contract. Aisha's fingers trembled slightly as she took it. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the ink crisp and precise. She skimmed through the contents, her eyes catching key phrases. Confidentiality agreement, 24/7 availability, immediate termination upon violation of terms. And then she saw it. The salary. Her breath hitched again. It was even higher than he had mentioned. Enough to pull her out of the suffocating cycle of poverty. Enough to start over. Her mind screamed at her to walk away. But her heart, her desperate, struggling heart, knew she couldn't. With a deep inhale, she picked up the silver pen resting inside the folder and signed her name. Welcome to his world. The moment her signature dried on the paper, Rashid took the folder from her hands and snapped it shut. It's done, he murmured. Aisha exhaled shakily, feeling as though she had just signed away her soul. She expected Rashid to drive her home. Instead, the car turned onto a private road lined with palm trees and expensive villas. Her stomach clenched. Where are we going? Rashid didn't answer immediately. He simply tapped his fingers against the armrest before saying, You start now. Aisha blinked.
Now.
His gaze flickered toward her. Unless you've changed your mind? She had. 1,000 times over. But she had already signed. And Rashid didn't seem like the kind of man who let people back out of deals easily. So she shook her head.
No.
I'm just surprised. He nodded approvingly. Good. A few minutes later, the car pulled through an enormous set of iron gates. Beyond them, a sprawling estate stretched into the night, its grand architecture illuminated by soft golden lights. Aisha's jaw dropped. She had never seen anything like it before. The car rolled to a smooth stop in front of a marble staircase. A man in a crisp suit opened Aisha's door, gesturing for her to step out. Her legs felt wobbly as she followed Rashid up the steps. The inside of the estate was even more breathtaking. High ceilings, glittering chandeliers, walls adorned with priceless art. The scent of fresh jasmine filled the air. "This is where you'll be working," Rashid said, leading her through the grand hallway. "You'll have a room here as well." Aisha nearly tripped. What? You'll live here," Rashid repeated, glancing at her with amusement. "I don't have time to track you down every morning. You'll be more useful if you're close." Aisha felt her heart hammer against her ribs. "Live here? In this palace? I don't know if that's a good idea," she said hesitantly. Rashid stopped walking. Then he turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Then leave." Her breath caught. Was he testing her? She looked around, her fingers trembling slightly. If she left now, she would go back to a cold, tiny apartment with unpaid rent. Back to uncertainty. But if she stayed, she had no idea what she was stepping into. She swallowed hard, then looked him straight in the eyes. "I'll stay." Rashid held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. "Then welcome to my world, Aisha." Aisha barely had time to process what she had just agreed to before Rashid continued walking. His long strides forced her to follow quickly, her heels clicking against the gleaming marble floors. Live here? Work for him full-time? The reality of it all settled in her chest like a heavy stone. As they moved deeper into the mansion, she tried to take in everything: the towering paintings, the golden chandeliers, the velvet drapes that whispered wealth and power. She had worked in hotels before, seen luxury up close, but this was different. This was someone's personal kingdom, and now she was stepping into it. Finally, Rashid stopped in front of a set of dark mahogany doors. With a push, they swung open, revealing an expansive study. Inside, a fireplace crackled softly, casting shadows on the walls lined with bookshelves. A large desk sat at the center, papers stacked neatly on top. But what caught Aisha's attention wasn't the expensive decor, it was the feeling in the air. This room wasn't just an office. It was a command center. Rashid stepped inside and motioned for her to do the same. The moment she crossed the threshold, the doors swung shut behind her. Aisha swallowed. "You start now," Rashid said smoothly, settling into a leather chair behind the desk. She hesitated. "What exactly do you want me to do?" He leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. "I need to know how fast you learn. I have meetings, investments, and businesses in different parts of the world. Your job is to keep everything running smoothly without mistakes." The intensity in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. Aisha squared her shoulders. "I'll do my best." Rashid's lips quirked slightly, as if amused. "We'll see." He opened a drawer, pulled out a tablet, and slid it across the desk toward her. "Your first task, go through the file labeled Kingston. I need a full summary in 10 minutes. Aisha blinked. 10 minutes. "Time is money," he said simply. Taking a steadying breath, she picked up the tablet and tapped the screen. A long document appeared, filled with numbers, contracts, and details about a multi-million-dollar deal. Her pulse raced. She wasn't sure how much time had passed when she finally lifted her head. "This is a merger between Kingston Enterprises and a European logistics firm," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Kingston is struggling with supply chain issues, and this deal will help stabilize their global operations." But she hesitated. Rashid arched an eyebrow. "But..." She met his gaze. "Their profit margins will take a hit in the first year. The terms favor the logistics firm more. If Kingston signs this without renegotiating, they'll be at a disadvantage long-term." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then, Rashid's lips curved into a smirk. "Interesting." He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping just a foot away from her. "Most people skim these files and tell me what I already know. But you," his gaze was sharp, assessing. "You caught something useful." Aisha tried not to let her nerves show. "Was that a test?" "Everything is a test," he murmured. His proximity made it hard to breathe. He radiated confidence, control, things she had never seen up close in a man before. Rashid turned away and picked up his phone. "Get Kingston's CEO on the line," he instructed someone. "We're renegotiating." Aisha's mind reeled. Had she just made a real impact on a deal worth millions? Before she could process it, Rashid glanced at her again. "Good start," he said. "But don't get comfortable. One smart observation won't be enough to survive in my world." Survive. The way he said it made her stomach twist. Aisha forced herself to stand tall. "I don't plan to just survive." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Then he chuckled. "We'll see about that. New rules, new life." By the time Aisha was shown to her living quarters, she was exhausted. The guest suite she had been given was larger than her entire old apartment. The bed was draped in silk sheets, the windows overlooked a private courtyard, and the bathroom alone was the size of a hotel spa. It felt unreal. As she sat on the edge of the bed, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You've entered a world where trust is a luxury. Watch your step." Aisha's heart pounded. She shot to her feet, her eyes darting around the room. Was someone watching her? She rushed to the door and locked it before checking the message again. Who had sent it? And what did they mean? Her fingers hovered over the reply button. But before she could type anything, another message came through. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." Aisha's blood ran cold. Had she just walked into something far more dangerous than she had realized? Aisha's hands trembled as she clutched her phone. The ominous messages on the screen sent a chill down her spine. She glanced around the lavish bedroom, suddenly feeling like the walls were closing in. Was someone watching her? Had she walked into a trap? Her mind raced. Who could have sent the messages? Was it a warning? A threat? She forced herself to take a deep breath. Panicking wouldn't help. She needed to think. There were only two options. Either someone in Rashid's inner circle didn't trust her and wanted her gone, or she had unknowingly stepped into something bigger than just a high-paying assistant job. Aisha's fingers hovered over the reply button, but she hesitated. If someone was watching her, responding could make things worse. Before she could decide, a sharp knock on the door made her jump. She spun around, heart hammering in her chest. "Aisha." Rashid's voice. Smooth, controlled, but firm. For a second, she debated whether to pretend she was asleep. But she knew better than to ignore him. Swallowing hard, she moved to the door and unlocked it. Rashid stood in the dim hallway, dressed in a crisp white shirt with the top buttons undone. The faintest hint of cologne and expensive cigars clung to him. His eyes, dark and unreadable, flickered over her face. Is something wrong? His voice was quieter than usual, almost curious. Aisha's grip tightened around her phone. Should she tell him about the messages?
No, not yet.
She forced a smile. No, I was just getting settled. His gaze lingered on her for a moment longer, as if he didn't quite believe her. Then, without another word, he stepped into the room. Aisha tensed as he crossed the space, moving toward the window. He pulled the curtain aside slightly, peering outside. "Do you know why I hired you?" he asked suddenly. Aisha blinked. "Because I needed a job?" A ghost of a smirk touched his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because you're an outsider." She frowned. What does that mean? He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You don't belong to my world. You have no connections here, no loyalties to anyone. That makes you valuable." Aisha felt an uneasy knot form in her stomach. Valuable how? Rashid studied her for a moment before speaking. "There are people who want to see me fall. Competitors, enemies, even some within my own family. They watch my every move, waiting for a weakness." Her heart pounded. "And you think I could be one?" His smirk returned, this time sharper.
No.
"You don't have the power to betray me yet." The way he said it made her shiver.
Yet.
Aisha straightened her shoulders. "I'm not interested in your business games. I just want to do my job." Rashid stepped closer, his presence almost overwhelming. "And what if your job isn't just taking notes and running errands?" She swallowed. "What do you mean?" His fingers trailed across the edge of the desk, his eyes never leaving hers. Sometimes, the most dangerous threats come from the shadows. You'll be my eyes and ears. You'll tell me who whispers behind my back, who tries to undermine my authority. Aisha's stomach twisted. You want me to spy? He tilted his head slightly. I want you to survive. The weight of his words settled heavily between them. Aisha had thought this job would be about professionalism, about doing paperwork and organizing schedules. But this was something else entirely. Rashid sighed, as if reading her thoughts. You can walk away now if you want. I won't stop you. Her breath caught in her throat. Was he serious? She thought about her life before this moment. The struggling waitress shifts, the constant fear of deportation, the feeling of being invisible. Here, with Rashid, she wasn't just a nameless girl. She was something more. Maybe it was dangerous. Maybe it was reckless. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she had a chance to be more than just a survivor. Aisha took a deep breath and met his gaze. I'll stay. Rashid's eyes flickered with something unreadable.
Good.
He turned and walked toward the door, but before he left, he glanced over his shoulder. One more thing. Aisha stiffened. What? His smirk deepened. Be careful who you trust. Then he was gone. Aisha stood frozen, the weight of his words settling over her. Be careful who you trust. She looked down at her phone, at the ominous messages still glowing on the screen.
Who had sent them?
And more importantly, who was watching her? Aisha lay in bed that night, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The night's events, the unsettling conversation with Rashid, and the mysterious messages that refused to stop flashing on her phone, all churned in her mind like a storm. Every corner of the room seemed to close in on her, and every shadow felt like it was hiding something more sinister than she could grasp. She turned over on her side, checking the time. It was nearly 3 a.m. Sleep had eluded her for hours, but her mind wouldn't allow her to rest. The walls of the luxurious apartment felt suffocating now, a gilded cage. She couldn't escape. The silence was overwhelming. Even though she was surrounded by lavish furnishings and expensive decor, it felt like she was alone in a cold, empty world. And then, the phone buzzed again. Aisha's heart skipped a beat as she turned over, her hand automatically reaching for the device. She swiped it open, her fingers trembling with anticipation and dread. It was another message, but this one was different. The text read, "We are watching you. Don't think you're untouchable." A chill ran down Aisha's spine, and for the first time since she'd arrived in this world of wealth and power, she felt truly afraid.
Who were they?
And why had they singled her out? She tried to steady her breath, but her thoughts raced. What did it mean to be watched? She was beginning to suspect that Rashid's enemies had a vested interest in her, not because of anything she had done, but because of what she might represent. A simple assistant, yet here she was, caught in the web of an empire that thrived on power, secrecy, and ruthless business deals. Aisha could feel her stomach twist into knots. Her instinct screamed that something was wrong, that Rashid's world wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly. But then another part of her, a part she barely understood, was drawn to him, to his power, his control. There was something magnetic about him, something she couldn't deny, even though she knew she should stay away. He was unpredictable, cold, and enigmatic, but somehow he made her feel seen, like she mattered in a way no one ever had. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, and she typed a response. "Who are you?"
She didn't know what to expect.
It was reckless, she knew that. But the message was driving her to the edge of something she couldn't yet understand, and she needed answers. Seconds passed. Her pulse raced, and she held her breath. And then the response came. "You'll know soon enough." Aisha's eyes widened. It was a cryptic answer, one that didn't offer any real information but carried an ominous undertone. What did it mean? Was this just a warning? Or was someone trying to manipulate her into doing something she didn't want? She threw the phone down on the bed, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't think clearly anymore. The walls of the apartment seemed to press in tighter, and she felt as though she were being suffocated by her own fear. There was only one person who could help her make sense of all this: Rashid. But could she trust him? Aisha sat up, staring at the phone, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on her. If she told him about the messages, would he see her as a liability? A weakness? He had made it clear that she was a tool in his world, something to be used when necessary, but never truly trusted. Still, he had protected her earlier, hadn't he? He could have allowed the manager to fire her, but he hadn't. That was something, wasn't it? But was it enough to trust him with something as dangerous as this? The last thing Aisha wanted was to become a pawn in a game where she couldn't even see the rules. Before she could make up her mind, the door to the apartment clicked open. Rashid entered without knocking, his tall frame cutting a sharp silhouette against the dim hallway light. Aisha's breath hitched. How had he known she was awake? Rashid's eyes scanned the room, and then his gaze landed on her. There was something unreadable in his expression, a mixture of concern and suspicion. "Why are you awake?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. Aisha blinked, her thoughts racing. She had to choose her words carefully. Should she lie, or should she come clean? Should she tell him everything? She decided to hedge her bets. "I couldn't sleep," she replied, her voice steady. "Just thinking."
He didn't buy it.
About what? His tone was sharp now, as if he could see right through her. Aisha looked away, not sure how to answer. "I'm just trying to figure things out." There was a long pause before he moved further into the room. He didn't sit down. Instead, he stood at the edge of the bed, his posture stiff and commanding. "I can help you with that," he said quietly. "But you need to stop being so damn cautious, Aisha. In my world, you can't afford to second-guess every move you make." Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if she was more afraid of the growing intensity in his voice or the way he was staring at her, like he was trying to see into her soul. "I didn't ask for this," Aisha replied, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't ask for any of this. But here I am." His eyes softened just slightly. "You made a choice when you got in that car." Aisha was silent for a moment, the weight of his words pressing on her. She had chosen to stay, even after she had sensed something was wrong. "I don't want to be part of whatever game you're playing," she said finally. "But I'm stuck. And I don't know who to trust anymore." Rashid's gaze sharpened. "You're right not to trust anyone, except for me." The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded with meaning. Aisha's pulse quickened, and she found herself at a crossroads. Was this really the world she wanted to be part of? "Are you sure you want to keep going down this path, Aisha?" Rashid's voice was almost a challenge. "Because once you do, there's no going back." She met his eyes and, for the first time, saw something flicker in them, a mix of danger and sincerity that confused her. Aisha's decision was made in that moment. She had no other choice but to move forward. "Then let's do this," she said, her voice low but steady. Rashid didn't say another word. He merely nodded, as if expecting nothing less. But as he turned to leave, Aisha couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far darker than she could ever imagine. The door clicked shut behind Rashid with a soft finality, leaving Aisha alone in the dim room. The quiet was almost deafening now, a stark contrast to the tension that had pulsed between them only moments ago. Her mind raced, but the words he had said kept circling around her like a storm she couldn't escape. "There's no going back." She ran her fingers through her hair, trying to clear the fog in her thoughts. She had made a choice, but was it the right one? The silence of the room seemed to press in on her, and she felt the weight of it in her chest. She was in deeper than she had ever intended to go, drawn into a world of high stakes and power games, a world she had no real understanding of. She had thought she was simply helping out, keeping her head down and doing her job. But that wasn't what this was anymore, was it? She glanced at the phone again, still lying on the bed, its screen dark. The cryptic messages she had received earlier gnawed at her thoughts. "We are watching you. Don't think you're untouchable." What did it all mean? Who was watching her? What did Rashid have to do with it? Could she trust him? Or was she just another pawn in a game far bigger than she had realized? Aisha stood up, pacing across the room, her mind a whirlwind. She didn't like feeling like this, out of control, uncertain, afraid. She had always prided herself on being level-headed, but now, every choice seemed to carry consequences she couldn't fully comprehend. The knock on the door came suddenly, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. Aisha froze. Her pulse quickened as she slowly turned toward the door. Her first instinct was to ignore it, to pretend she hadn't heard. But something told her she couldn't. The feeling of being watched had been growing stronger all night, like invisible eyes were tracking her every move. Taking a deep breath, she approached the door. The sound of the knock echoed in her ears, and with each passing second, the tension in the air seemed to build, heavier and more suffocating. She hesitated before opening it, her fingers trembling as they gripped the handle. When she opened the door, she was met by a tall figure in a dark suit. A man, his features sharp, his expression unreadable. He was well-groomed, his black hair slicked back, and his cold, gray eyes assessed her with a look that sent a chill down her spine. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Miss Aisha," he said smoothly, his voice low and professional. "Mr. Rashid would like to see you. Now." The words felt like a command more than a request. Aisha's throat went dry as she tried to steady her breath. She glanced over her shoulder, her heart pounding, but she knew she couldn't refuse. This was the world she had chosen to enter. And once you were in, there was no way out. "Of course," she replied, trying to sound calm even as her mind raced with questions. What was this all about? And why had Rashid sent this man, this stranger, after her? She stepped out into the hallway, the door closing softly behind her, and followed the man down the corridor. Her footsteps echoed on the polished marble floor, and the air felt thick with an almost electric charge. The building seemed different now, as if the walls were closing in with every step she took. The man led her through a series of hallways, past closed doors and silent, well-dressed employees who barely seemed to notice her. Every person they passed seemed to be moving with purpose, their faces expressionless, as if they were all just playing a part in some grand, unspoken performance. Aisha felt out of place, like an intruder in a world she had never been meant to inhabit. They reached an elevator at the end of the hall, and the man pressed the button for the top floor. As the door slid shut, Aisha couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. She had no idea where this would lead, but a small, insistent voice in the back of her mind kept telling her that she was about to learn something that could change everything. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. The silence between them was thick, and Aisha's pulse seemed to beat louder with each passing floor. She stole a glance at the man, but his expression remained unreadable, his gaze fixed ahead. He wasn't giving anything away. Finally, the elevator doors opened to reveal an expansive office suite. The space was sleek, modern, and utterly intimidating, filled with dark wood furniture, sharp lines, and large windows that overlooked the city below. The view was breathtaking, but it didn't calm Aisha's nerves. If anything, the imposing decor only added to the sense of power that seemed to saturate the entire building. The man didn't speak again as he gestured for Aisha to follow him inside. She stepped into the room, her heart racing as she took in the sight before her. At the far end of the room, Rashid stood by a large, glass desk, his back to her. His presence was commanding, filling the room with an energy that made it impossible for Aisha to ignore him. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, and the way he held himself, tall, confident, untouchable, reminded her of a lion in a gilded cage. He was a man who knew exactly what he wanted, and was willing to do whatever it took to get it. He turned as she entered, his eyes locking onto hers immediately. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't quite explain it, but there was something different about him tonight. The usual coldness in his gaze seemed to be mixed with something else, something darker, more dangerous. "Sit down," he said, his voice low but firm. "We need to talk." Aisha hesitated only for a moment before she walked to one of the chairs across from his desk. She sat, trying to calm her racing heart, but the tension in the room was palpable. Rashid's presence filled every corner of the space, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was trapped, caught in the grip of something she couldn't control. Rashid didn't sit immediately. Instead, He remained standing, his eyes never leaving hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence stretching between them like an unspoken agreement. Finally, he spoke. "I've been watching you, Aisha," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "And I need you to understand something. You are not just a bystander in this game. You're a player now." Aisha's pulse quickened. She wasn't sure what to say. She had 1,000 questions, but the weight of his words left her speechless. "I didn't ask for any of this," she finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm here now, and I need to know what's really going on. What am I getting into?" Rashid's gaze softened for just a moment, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He stepped closer, his presence overpowering. "You're here because I chose you," he said, his voice thick with something she couldn't name. "And that choice comes with a price that you're going to have to pay. Are you willing to accept it?" Aisha swallowed hard. The room seemed to spin, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she could answer him. But deep down, she knew the answer. She had already made her choice. She had already crossed the line. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm willing to accept it." The air seemed to shift around them as Rashid nodded, his eyes darkening with something she couldn't understand. "Good," he said, his voice colder now. "Then let's begin." Aisha's stomach twisted. She had no idea what was coming next, but she was in it now. There was no turning back. The words hung in the air like a shroud, heavy with meaning. Aisha's heart raced, her palms beginning to sweat as she tried to process what had just happened. The finality in Rashid's voice left no room for doubt. This was it. She was now tangled in a web she couldn't see, trapped between a desire for answers and the fear of uncovering too much. Rashid stepped back, his gaze still locked on her, as if waiting for her reaction. Aisha couldn't tear her eyes away from him. There was something unsettling about his calm demeanor, something that made her feel as if every move she made was being anticipated, as if her every thought was no longer her own. This man was dangerous, and somehow she was right in the middle of it. "I know you're wondering what this is all about," Rashid said, breaking the silence. "You've been asking the right questions, Aisha, but the answers come at a cost. Information is power, and right now, you don't have the power to ask more than you're ready to hear." Her throat tightened. "What kind of game is this? What do you want from me?" Rashid's eyes darkened slightly, his lips twitching as if fighting a smile. "Power is never given freely. It's earned, and it's taken. You have something I need, and I'm willing to give you what you want in exchange. But remember, everything comes with a price." Aisha stood up, suddenly feeling claustrophobic, as if the walls of the room were closing in on her. She moved to the window, trying to steady her breathing as she stared out over the city below. The lights of the buildings twinkled like stars, and for a moment, it almost seemed peaceful, but the quiet outside contrasted sharply with the storm brewing inside her mind. "What do I have that you need?" she finally asked, her voice shaking more than she would have liked. She didn't care if Rashid saw her uncertainty. The questions were bubbling up uncontrollably now. "You've been following me, watching my every move.
Why?
What do you really want from me?" Rashid walked to the window beside her, standing so close that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. He didn't speak at first, just stood there as if considering how much to reveal. Aisha's mind screamed for answers, for clarity, but she felt an unsettling pull to stay silent, to wait for him to explain himself. "You're not the first person I've chosen, Aisha," he said after a long pause, his voice now quieter, more measured. "I've done this many times before. People like you, ordinary people with skills or knowledge they don't even realize they have, become invaluable when the stakes are high enough." His gaze shifted slightly, and he let out a breath. "But you're different. There's something about you, something that makes you more than just a pawn in my game." Aisha turned to face him, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean by that?" Rashid's lips pressed into a thin line, and for a brief moment, Aisha could see a flicker of something almost human in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, calculating expression she was beginning to fear. "You've been asking the wrong questions, Aisha," he said, his voice hard. You're too focused on trying to understand the why of it all. But you need to focus on the what. Her heart pounded in her chest. What do you mean? Where you are right now, Rashid said, his voice dropping to a whisper. This place, this life, it's all part of something much bigger. There are forces at play that you can't begin to understand. I'm not just involved in corporate power or politics or money. I'm talking about power that goes beyond all of that. Global power. What you're about to step into is dangerous, Aisha. There's no turning back. Aisha's pulse quickened, a sinking feeling in her stomach. Global power? That was too much. It felt too big, too dangerous. She wanted to ask more, to understand, but she was afraid of what she might hear. Do you know what's really going on, Aisha? Rashid's voice was low, conspiratorial now, and she found herself leaning in without realizing it. Do you know why you're here? You've been in the right place at the right time, surrounded by people you don't fully understand, caught in a web of secrets too deep to escape. But you're more involved in this than you realize. You're not just here because of your skills. You're here because you're connected to something much bigger. He stepped closer, his breath warm against her ear as he spoke. You're about to find out what it really means to have a target on your back. Because the people who want what you have, they will stop at nothing to get it. Aisha stepped back, her mind spinning. She could feel the world around her shifting, warping into something unfamiliar, something that made her skin crawl. What had she walked into? I don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. What is it you want from me, Rashid? He finally turned to face her fully, his gaze piercing. For the first time, there was no trace of that cold confidence. Instead, something flickered behind his eyes, something she couldn't place. Was it regret? Fear? Aisha couldn't tell. But what she did know was that Rashid was no longer the man she had thought him to be. He was part of something bigger, and she was caught in the middle of it. I want you to help me uncover the truth, he said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that seemed to press down on her chest. The truth that has been buried for years, hidden from the world. And I need you to dig deep, to get your hands dirty. The truth will either destroy you or make you more powerful than you ever dreamed. But you have to decide if you're willing to pay the price. I'm offering you everything: wealth, status, power. But it comes with a cost. Aisha's mind raced, every part of her screaming to walk away, to run. But she was already too far gone. The web had already been woven around her, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape. So, what now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her heart hammering in her chest. What happens next? Rashid's lips curled into a slow, almost predatory smile. Now, he said, stepping closer to her again. Now you make a choice. Will you stand by my side and help me unravel the lies, or will you walk away and risk everything? Aisha's world seemed to stop for a heartbeat. The question was simple, but the weight of it was unbearable. The consequences of either choice felt monumental, as if the very fabric of her life was about to be torn apart. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the answer, but she knew she had no choice but to make it. Without a word, she looked at Rashid, her mind made up, and something inside her settled, though it wasn't peace. It was something else, something darker. She had crossed the threshold, and there was no going back. I'll help you, she said, her voice steady now, even though every fiber of her being screamed against it. Rashid's smile widened. Good, because you're about to step into a world of power that will change everything. The room seemed to grow colder, and the weight of the moment settled in Aisha's chest. Whatever lay ahead, she was in it now. And there was no turning back. The moment Aisha uttered the words, she felt the shift. It was as if she had stepped off the familiar path and into a shadowed alley, one that led into the unknown. The weight of the decision hung in the air, thicker now, as if the very atmosphere in the room had changed. Rashid's face, previously unreadable, now glowed with an eerie satisfaction, as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. Well, he said, voice quiet but carrying a certain finality, welcome to the game. Aisha's pulse raced, but she held her ground, her gaze unwavering. She was in this now, whether she liked it or not. But the dread in her stomach wouldn't subside. What had she just agreed to? She had no idea what she was about to walk into, but she knew this decision would change everything. Rashid took a step back, pacing slowly around the room, his hands clasped behind his back as he spoke. I won't sugarcoat this, Aisha. What you're about to become a part of isn't for the faint of heart. You're not just working for me. You're working for a much bigger organization, one that pulls the strings in ways you can't begin to comprehend. We're not talking about business deals, political moves, or criminal empires. What we're after is something that's been hidden from the public for decades. And you're going to help us bring it into the light.